What happens when charm meets challenge on live television? And the smile doesn't come back. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping moment, make sure you subscribe to Stage View, like this video, and drop a comment right now, because today, we're stepping inside a confrontation that had the studio holding its breath. The lights inside the studio of The View glow warm and inviting. The set is bathed in its usual morning brightness. The audience murmurs with anticipation, a low hum of excitement that always lingers before a major guest walks out. Cameras glide silently across the floor. Producers whisper into headsets. Everything feels polished, controlled. Then he walks out. Hugh Grant. The applause is loud, enthusiastic. After all, this is the man known for wit wrapped in politeness, the king of self-deprecating charm. He waves briefly, offering a tight smile. Not wide, not dazzling, just enough. Across the table sits Whoopi Goldberg, composed as ever. Calm, observant, the veteran moderator of the show. Her expression is neutral, but sharp. She has seen decades of Hollywood egos, political fireworks, and awkward silences. She doesn't flinch easily, but today feels different. Hugh settles into his chair. He crosses his legs, adjusts his jacket. His posture is slightly rigid. A man who seems physically present, but mentally somewhere else. Whoopi begins with her signature ease. "So Hugh, you've been everywhere lately," she says, voice smooth, conversational. "New film, new press tour, lots of headlines. How are you holding up?" A safe question. A soft opening. Hugh nods once. "Yes, quite a bit of travel." A small pause. "I'm fine." The audience laughs lightly, expecting a punchline. None comes. Whoopi leans in, sensing the stiffness. "Just fine." His lips press together. "Yes, fine." There's a subtle shift in the air. It's not dramatic yet. It's microscopic. A fraction of a second too long between question and answer. A glance that doesn't quite meet the eyes. The warmth that usually defines Hugh Grant's interviews seems muted. Whoopi smiles, trying to lighten the mood. "You don't sound fine. You sound like someone who'd rather be anywhere else." A few audience members chuckle nervously. Hugh tilts his head. His eyes narrow, not aggressively but thoughtfully. Calculating. "Well," he replies, his British accent calm but edged. "One is often exactly where one would rather not be." The laughter this time is thinner. Uncertain. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. "Oh," she says. "And where would you rather be?" And here it comes. The moment no one expected. Hugh doesn't smile. Doesn't cushion it. Doesn't soften it with irony. Home. One word. Flat. Direct. The audience reaction stutters. A few gasps. A ripple of whispers. Even the co-hosts glance at each other. Whoopi pauses. The studio lights suddenly feel harsher. Brighter. "Well," she responds, tone measured. "We're glad you're here." Hugh nods politely. "Yes." Silence. It stretches just a beat too long. This isn't playful sarcasm. This isn't cheeky British humor. There's something colder under the surface. Something restrained. Whoopi shifts gears. "You've done press for decades. What makes this round different?" Hugh exhales softly, leaning back. "Perhaps I've done it for decades." The audience laughs again, but this time it's forced. Because there's no twinkle in his eye. No wink to signal it's a joke. Whoopi doesn't laugh. She studies him. "So you're tired of it?" He shrugs. "It's repetitive." Now the tension is real. The co-hosts exchange side glances. One of them attempts to pivot toward the film, asking about a particularly dramatic scene. Hugh answers briefly. Efficiently. No elaboration. No anecdotes. Just clipped responses. It's as if he's conserving energy. Or holding something back. Whoopi watches closely. She's not the type to let energy drift without addressing it. "Let me ask you something," she says, her voice lowering slightly. "Do you even enjoy doing these interviews anymore?" The room stills. A bold question. Hugh's fingers tap lightly against his knee. He looks at her directly now. "Finally. Fully." "That depends," he says quietly. "On." Whoopi presses. "On whether the conversation feels real." There it is. The temperature drops. A few audience members audibly react. A sharp inhale from somewhere in the second row. Whoopi doesn't blink. "Are you saying this doesn't feel real?" Hugh's expression remains unreadable. "I'm saying," he answers slowly, "that sometimes these exchanges feel less like conversations and more like transactions." The word lands heavy. Transactions. The air thickens. Whoopi leans back in her chair, folding her hands calmly on the table. A veteran at handling friction, she doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't snap. But her tone sharpens. Well, Hugh, we're not here to conduct a transaction. We're here to talk. And yet, he replies smoothly, there's always something to sell. The audience murmurs louder now. This isn't banter anymore. It's confrontation dressed in politeness. Whoopi's eyes narrow slightly, not in anger, but in focus. Your movie, she says. Yes, that's why you're here. Precisely, he responds. A beat. But I suspect we both know that. The silence now is deafening. One of the co-hosts tries to interject with a lighter question about his co-stars. Hugh answers, but his voice lacks animation. His replies are sharp, almost clinical. Whoopi turns back to him. You seem irritated, she says plainly. I'm not irritated, he responds instantly. Disengage, then? He pauses. That might be closer. Gasps ripple across the audience again. Disengaged. On live television. Whoopi's jaw tightens ever so slightly. So why come? Hugh's eyes flicker. Something flashes there. Fatigue? Frustration? Honesty? Obligation, he says. And that's when the room shifts completely. Because there is no humor in his voice. No deflection. Just cold truth. The audience no longer laughs. They watch. Whoopi folds her arms loosely. Well, she says, measured and firm. Obligation works both ways. We're here to give you space. But we also expect respect. The word respect hangs in the air like a challenge. Hugh meets her gaze. And you have it. Do we? She counters softly. Another pause. This one feels like a standoff. The cameras zoom slightly closer. Viewers at home lean in without realizing it. Hugh inhales. If my tone suggests otherwise, he says evenly, that's not my intention. But I won't pretend enthusiasm I don't feel. There it is again. That icy candor. Whoopi studies him for a long second. Then she nods slowly. Well, she replies, honesty is welcome here. But so is energy. A few scattered claps from the audience. Hugh gives the faintest hint of a smile. Energy, he repeats. Yes, that would help. The words sound almost like a challenge back. For the first time, Whoopi's expression hardens slightly. You think we're lacking it? I think, Hugh says carefully, that sometimes these interviews are predictable. A co-host gasps under her breath. Whoopi leans forward. Then surprise us. The tension spikes. The audience collectively holds its breath. Hugh straightens. All right. And for the first time since he walked out, there's a spark in his eyes. But it isn't warmth. It's something sharper. The kind of spark that precedes a collision. And as the cameras keep rolling, as millions watch from their living rooms, as social media fingers hover over keyboards ready to clip and post, the stage is set. Because what happens next will not be forgotten. And the cold reply that stunned the room? That was only the beginning. The silence after all right feels electric. You can almost hear the faint buzz of the studio lights above the set of The View. The audience shifts in their seats. A cough echoes from somewhere in the back row. No one dares laugh now. Whoopi Goldberg doesn't look away. Go on, she says calmly, folding her hands together on the table. You said you wanted something less predictable. So let's make it less predictable. Across from her, Hugh Grant adjusts slightly in his chair. His jaw tightens. For the first time, he doesn't look like the charming rom-com icon. He looks like a man who has decided to stop performing. You want something real? He asks. Yes, Whoopi answers instantly. A pause. Fine, Hugh says quietly. I think the entire structure of press junkets is dishonest. A ripple of sound moves through the audience. A low wave of whispers. Whoopi doesn't flinch. Dishonest how? Because we all know what's happening, Hugh continues. I come here to promote a film. You ask questions that are meant to feel spontaneous, but are carefully timed. I give charming anecdotes I've already given 12 times this week. We all smile. Everyone claps. And nothing authentic actually happens. The air tightens. One of the co-hosts shifts uncomfortably. Another forces a polite smile. Whoopi tilts her head slightly. You think nothing authentic happens here? I think authenticity is edited, he replies. There's a collective inhale from the audience. Whoopi leans forward, elbows lightly on the table. Her voice lowers a notch. You're on live television. Exactly, Hugh says. The word lands hard. The tension is no longer subtle. It's visible in the posture of the crew members. In the way the camera lingers on Whoopi's expression. She studies him carefully. You've been doing this long enough to know the format, she says. No one forced you to come. Hugh's eyes flicker, but his voice remains steady. No, no one forced me. Then why the resentment? She asks. He exhales through his nose, almost a soft laugh, but not amused. It's not resentment, he says. It's fatigue. There's a difference. Explain it, Whoopi challenges. Hugh nods once. Resentment implies anger. Fatigue implies exhaustion with pretense. The word pretense hangs between them like a line drawn in chalk. The audience is silent now. No nervous laughter. No scattered applause. Whoopi's expression shifts, not defensive but sharper. More focused. You think we're pretending? I think, he replies carefully, that the machine of entertainment requires performance. And sometimes I'm simply tired of performing. A murmur rises from the audience again. Whoopi leans back, crossing her arms. Well, she says evenly, this isn't a movie set. No script here. Hugh's lips twitch slightly. Not a smile. Something closer to irony. There's always a script, he says softly. The room reacts instantly. Whoopi's eyebrows lift. You think I'm reading one right now? I think, Hugh answers, that expectations function like a script. There's something razor-sharp about the way he delivers it, calm, precise, unapologetic. One of the co-hosts finally interjects, attempting to diffuse the growing heat. Let's talk about the film, she says brightly. You play a very different kind of character this time. Darker, more cynical. Was that intentional? Hugh turns toward her, grateful perhaps for the shift, but his tone remains cool. It wasn't difficult, he says. Why not? She asks. Because cynicism, he replies, glancing briefly back at Whoopi, comes naturally with age. A few audience members laugh uncertainly. Whoopi doesn't. So this is age talking? She asks. In part, Hugh says. You reach a point where you stop pretending you're thrilled to answer the same question for the 50th time. Whoopi's voice sharpens slightly. Then maybe the question isn't the problem. And what is? Hugh counters. The attitude. A visible reaction from the audience, some claps, some gasps. For the first time, there's a faint flicker of something in Hugh's eyes. Irritation? Amusement? It's hard to tell. My attitude, he repeats quietly. Yes, Whoopi says firmly. You came in here closed off. Hugh's gaze locks with hers. I came in here honest. The words hit like a dropped glass. Whoopi leans forward again, her voice steady but pointed. Honesty doesn't require coldness. The audience claps louder this time. Hugh waits for the noise to die down. Perhaps not, he concedes. But neither does politeness require enthusiasm. The studio erupts into mixed reactions, some applause, some audible oohs. It's no longer just tension. It's a duel. Whoopi's face remains composed, but her tone grows firmer. You know what I think, she says. I suspect you're about to tell me, he replies. A few nervous laughs ripple through the room. I think, Whoopi continues, that sometimes actors confuse vulnerability with superiority. You don't want to play the game anymore. Fine, but don't walk into someone else's house and insult it. The line lands hard. The audience applauds loudly. Hugh's expression changes for the first time, just slightly. A tightening around the eyes. I'm not insulting your house, he says evenly. I'm questioning the architecture. A wave of reactions floods the room again. Whoopi tilts her head slowly. And you don't see how that sounds? It sounds, he replies, like someone being candid. There's that word again. Candid. Whoopi exhales softly. You know, she says, voice calmer now. I've interviewed a lot of people. Some exhausted. Some frustrated. Some arrogant. I can tell the difference. The implication hangs in the air. Hugh doesn't break eye contact. And which am I? He asks quietly. The audience is frozen. Whoopi pauses deliberately. I think you're tired, she says. But I also think you're hiding behind that. Hugh's jaw shifts. Hiding? Yes, she says. Because it's easier to dismiss the system than admit you benefit from it. The words are precise, controlled, but powerful. For the first time, Hugh doesn't respond immediately. The silence stretches longer than any before it. You can almost hear the collective pulse of the room. Finally, he speaks. I've benefited from many things, he says softly. But that doesn't mean I must celebrate them uncritically. The audience is split now, half nodding, half whispering. Whoopi studies him again. No one asked you to celebrate, she replies. We asked you to engage. Hugh's eyes flick down briefly to the table, then back up. And I am, he says. No, Whoopi counters. You're deflecting. The tension spikes again. Hugh leans forward slightly for the first time. I'm answering directly. Without warmth, Whoopi says. Is warmth required? He asks. The audience reacts audibly to that. Whoopi's tone drops an octave. It's human. There's something about that word, human, that shifts the atmosphere. For a brief second, something flickers across Hugh's face. A crack in the armor. I don't owe anyone a mood, he says quietly. The studio goes still. Whoopi nods slowly. No, she agrees. But when you sit at this table, you owe the audience presence. The applause is strong now. Hugh looks out toward the crowd for the first time since this began. Really looks at them. Dozens of faces staring back. Curious. Divided. Expectant. He swallows. And what if presence, he says carefully, means saying I'm tired of pretending? Whoopi responds instantly. Then say it without contempt. The word hits hardest of all. Contempt. Hugh's expression tightens. I don't feel contempt, he says. But you project it, Whoopi replies. The tension is unbearable now. One of the co-hosts whispers something under her breath. A producer can be seen near the edge of the stage, visibly anxious. This has gone far beyond playful disagreement. It's philosophical now. Personal. Hugh straightens in his seat. I don't dislike you, he says plainly. I didn't say you did, Whoopi answers. I don't dislike this show, he continues. But, she presses. But I dislike the ritual. A long pause. Whoopi's voice softens, just slightly. Then why not say that at the start? Hugh's lips part, then close again. Because that question hits somewhere deeper. The audience waits. The cameras stay locked in. And in that suspended moment, something shifts again. Not anger. Not ego. But something closer to exposure. And the cold reply that stunned Whoopi Goldberg? It's building towards something even sharper. Because this isn't just about an interview anymore. It's about control. And neither of them is ready to surrender it. The air in the studio feels thinner now. You can sense it in the way the audience sits straighter, in the way the co-hosts hesitate before shifting in their chairs. The conversation has stopped being promotional. It has stopped being polite. It has turned into something raw. Hugh Grant looks different than he did when he first walked onto the set of The View. The charming deflection is gone. The rehearsed anecdotes never arrived. What remains is a man exposed under bright studio lights. Across from him, Whoopi Goldberg doesn't blink. Then why not say that at the start? She had asked. The question still lingers in the air like smoke. Hugh finally answers, but his voice is lower now. Less sharp. More deliberate. Because, he says slowly, when you begin an interview by saying you're tired of the ritual, it becomes the story. A murmur passes through the crowd. Whoopi nods slightly. And this isn't... There's no sarcasm in her tone. Just clarity. Hugh exhales, almost a reluctant acknowledgement. Yes, he admits. Now it is. The admission shifts something. For the first time, it feels less like a duel and more like two veterans circling the same truth. Whoopi leans back in her chair, her posture easing just a fraction. You know, she says, voice steady but quieter. People watching at home don't see a ritual. They see a conversation. They see someone they've watched for years sitting right here. That matters to them. Hugh glances briefly toward the main camera, the one that beams directly into living rooms across the country. I don't dismiss that, he says. But there's a difference between connection and performance. And you think we're asking you to perform? Whoopi asks. I think the expectation is that I arrive with sparkle, he replies. And I didn't. A few audience members nod. One of the co-hosts finally jumps in, her voice cautious. But sparkle is part of what people love about you. Hugh gives a faint, almost sad smile. That's precisely the problem. The room stills again. Whoopi's eyes narrow slightly, not in anger, but in interest. Explain. Hugh folds his hands together, staring down at them for a moment before looking up again. When you're known for charm, he says, you become trapped by it. Every room expects the same version of you. The witty remark. The self-deprecating grin. The comfortable anecdote. He pauses. And when you don't deliver that, it feels like a betrayal. The word lands heavy. Whoopi tilts her head. Or, she counters gently, it feels like a mood. A ripple of soft laughter spreads through the audience, easing the tension just a little. Hugh almost smiles again, but it fades quickly. It's more than a mood, he says. It's honesty. Whoopi studies him. You keep coming back to that word. Because it matters, he says firmly. And what about respect? She asks. Does that matter? Hugh's jaw tightens. Yes. Then hear me, Whoopi says, leaning forward again. When you sit here and suggest this is all a machine, all a transaction, all scripted expectation, it diminishes the people who work very hard to make this space feel real. The audience claps lightly in agreement. Hugh listens. He doesn't interrupt this time. Whoopi continues. We're not your enemy. We're not forcing you to grin, but we are inviting you into a shared space. And that requires something from both sides. The tone isn't combative anymore. It's firm, grounded. Hugh nods slowly. I understand that, he says. But you must understand something too. Which is? She asks. He looks directly at her. There is an exhaustion that comes from being reduced to a persona. The room goes quiet again. Whoopi doesn't immediately respond. Instead, she lets the silence breathe. You think we reduced you? She asks. I think, Hugh says carefully, that the industry does. And sometimes these rooms feel like an extension of that. There's no edge in his voice now. Just weariness. Whoopi's expression softens, just slightly. You know, she says quietly, I've been doing this for a long time too. A few knowing murmurs ripple through the crowd. And I've been reduced to a persona more times than I can count. Hugh blinks. The tension shifts. But, Whoopi continues, I learned something. You can't fight every room. Sometimes you decide what you bring into it. Hugh absorbs that. And what if what I bring is this? He asks softly. Then own it, Whoopi replies instantly. Without making the rest of us collateral damage. The line lands with weight. Hugh leans back again, his fingers tapping lightly against the armrest. Collateral damage, he repeats. Yes, Whoopi says. Because when you come in cold, it doesn't just read as fatigue. It reads as disdain. There's that word again, circling back. Hugh shakes his head faintly. I don't disdain you, he says. Then show that, she replies. The audience is watching every micro-expression now. Hugh glances around the studio once more. The cameras, the crew, the faces in the crowd. For a moment, his composure wavers. You want warmth, he says quietly. I can fake it. Whoopi's response is immediate. Don't. The firmness in her voice slices through the room. We don't want fake, she says. We want engaged. Hugh studies her. And if engagement includes discomfort? He asks. Then let's be uncomfortable, Whoopi answers. The audience reacts, this time with stronger applause. The atmosphere changes again. It's no longer icy. It's charged. Hugh leans forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees now. Fine, he says. Here's discomfort. The room tightens once more. I think, he continues, that celebrity interviews often flatten people into digestible narratives. You become either charming or troubled, grateful or arrogant. There's no room for complexity. Whoopi nods slowly. And you think today proves that? Yes, Hugh says. Because we pushed back. Because the moment I deviated from expectation, the temperature changed. A beat. You noticed that too, Whoopi says. I did. The honesty in that exchange feels different, less combative, more mutual. Whoopi glances briefly at the audience. You know why the temperature changed? She asks. Why? Hugh replies. Because people are invested. They care how you show up. The room hums with agreement. Hugh's expression softens just a fraction. And what if I show up imperfectly? He asks. Then we talk about it. Whoopi says simply. There's something grounding about her tone now. Hugh sits with that. The co-host beside Whoopi finally speaks again, her voice gentler this time. Maybe this is the most real part of the interview. A few audience members nod. Hugh looks toward her. Perhaps, he says quietly. But then, one audience member calls out softly, not loud enough to disrupt, but audible. Just smile, Hugh. A few scattered laughs follow. And in that tiny, almost innocent moment, something flickers across Hugh's face. Not anger. Something deeper. He turns toward the audience. I'm not here to decorate your morning, he says. The words aren't shouted. They're calm. But they land like thunder. The studio falls completely silent. Whoopi's eyes widen slightly. That's the cold reply. Not to her. Not to a host. But to the room itself. And in that second, you can feel it. The line has been crossed. Because now it's not about ritual. Not about performance. It's about rejection of expectation. The audience shifts, stunned. Whoopi turns slowly toward Hugh. You think that's what this is? She asks quietly. Hugh holds her gaze. I think that's what parts of this industry expect, he says. The energy in the studio is no longer heated. It's fractured. Some faces in the crowd look offended. Others look intrigued. Whoopi inhales deeply. You're not decoration, she says firmly. You're a guest. And guests, he replies coolly, are often expected to entertain. The words hang there, sharp and undeniable. No music. No applause. Just tension. The cameras stay rolling. And everyone knows. This isn't just a tense interview anymore. It's a moment that will be replayed, clipped, dissected. And the fallout? It's only just beginning. For a split second after his words hang in the air, no one moves. You're not decoration, Whoopi Goldberg had said. And guests, Hugh Grant replied coolly, are often expected to entertain. Silence. Not the polite kind. Not the transitional pause before applause. This is the kind of silence that feels like it has weight. The kind that presses down on a room. The audience inside the studio of The View sits frozen. A few faces look stunned. Others look offended. Some, strangely, look impressed. Whoopi doesn't rush to fill the gap. She lets it sit, because she knows what just happened. A line was drawn. Finally, she exhales. Let me be very clear, she says, her voice calm but carrying. No one here expects you to juggle. A ripple of nervous laughter flickers through the audience. But, she continues, when you come onto a show that thrives on conversation, and you treat the conversation like a burden, people feel that. Hugh's expression remains composed, but something softer edges in around the eyes. I don't mean to treat it as a burden, he says quietly. Then what is it? Whoopi presses. He hesitates this time. Really hesitates. And that hesitation says more than any sharp remark. It's exposure, he admits. The room shifts again. Exposure. Whoopi repeats. Yes, Hugh says. Not of my film. Of myself. Of a version of myself I don't always recognize. There's no sarcasm in his tone now. No bite. Just something unguarded. The audience leans in. You've built a career on being that version, Whoopi says gently. I know, he replies. And now, he says slowly, I'm not sure I want to be him every time I sit in a chair like this. A long pause. The tension that filled the studio earlier doesn't vanish, but it changes shape. It's no longer combative. It's contemplative. Whoopi studies him for a moment. You think I haven't felt that? She asks softly. Hugh looks at her, surprised. You think I haven't sat here and thought, I don't feel like being the steady one today? She continues. The audience murmurs quietly. But the thing about live television, she says, is that people don't tune in for our moods. They tune in for connection. Hugh nods faintly. And what if connection sometimes looks messy? He asks. Then we show the mess, Whoopi answers. Another beat. And we don't punish it. That lands differently. Hugh looks down at his hands, then back up. I wasn't trying to punish anyone, he says. But you were pushing, Whoopi replies. Yes, he admits. Why? He considers the question carefully. Because, he says, voice lower now, sometimes pushing is the only way to feel something real in a room that feels rehearsed. The audience is completely silent. Whoopi tilts her head slightly. And did it feel real? She asks. Hugh meets her gaze. Yes. The honesty in that single word changes everything. For the first time since he walked onto the stage, there's no edge. No shield. Just candor. Whoopi nods once. Good, she says. Then we did our job. A small wave of applause rises, tentative at first, then stronger. The co-host beside Whoopi smiles gently. I think this might be the most talked about interview we've had in a while, she says lightly. That earns a bigger laugh from the audience, easing the tension even more. Hugh lets out a breath that almost resembles a chuckle. I'm sure my publicist is thrilled, he says dryly. The audience laughs again, this time genuinely. The frost has cracked. Whoopi allows herself a small smile. Look, she says, leaning forward one last time. You don't have to sparkle. You don't have to perform. But when you come here, just be willing to meet us halfway. Hugh considers that. Halfway, he repeats. Yes. He nods slowly. That seems fair. And in that moment, the confrontation dissolves. Not into forced cheerfulness, not into glossy resolution, but into something quieter. Respect. The segment wraps with a brief mention of the film, almost an afterthought now. The applause is steady as Hugh stands. He shakes hands with the co-hosts. When he turns to Whoopi, there's a pause. They hold each other's gaze for a second longer than expected. Then, unexpectedly, he smiles. Not the polished red carpet grin. A small one. Real. The cameras cut to commercial. But the story doesn't end there. Because within minutes, clips begin circulating online. I'm not here to decorate your morning. Hugh Grant fires back. Whoopi Goldberg clashes with Hugh Grant live. Social media explodes. Some viewers praise Hugh for refusing to fake enthusiasm. Others criticize him for seeming dismissive. Hashtags trend. Debate threads stretch for thousands of comments. On one side, people argue that celebrities are human beings allowed to have off days. On the other, viewers insist that appearing on a show like this carries responsibility. By evening, entertainment outlets dissect every second of the exchange. Body language experts analyze his posture. Media commentators debate whether Whoopi handled it perfectly or pushed too hard. The clip of his cold reply plays on repeat. "I'm not here to decorate your morning." For some, it becomes a rallying cry against celebrity performance culture. For others, it sounds like arrogance. But one thing is undeniable. It was real. And that's why it resonated. Days later, in follow-up interviews, Hugh briefly addresses it. "No hard feelings," he says in a radio appearance. "It was an honest conversation." Whoopi, on the next episode of the show, references it calmly. "We're not afraid of tough moments," she tells viewers. That's what live TV is. The audience applauds. Because that's the truth of it. What began as a cold reply became something else entirely. A rare, unscripted collision between expectation and authenticity. Not a meltdown. Not a scandal. A moment. And moments like that remind us why live television still matters. They remind us that behind the polished lighting and rehearsed segments are real people navigating complicated emotions in real time. Sometimes charm falters. Sometimes tension rises. Sometimes someone says the quiet part out loud. And when they do, we lean closer. So what do you think? Was Hugh Grant brave for refusing to fake enthusiasm? Or was he dismissive of the platform that gave him space? Did Whoopi strike the right balance between accountability and openness? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear your take on this unforgettable clash. And if you love diving deep into explosive, emotional, behind-the-scenes moments like this, make sure you subscribe to Stage View right now. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to see how live TV can turn in a heartbeat. Because here on Stage View, we don't just watch the moment. We step inside it.